Hello friends, this is Worm, and I do apologize for the sincerely missed content on Monday and Tuesday. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but today I wanted to talk about Bungie's email to me. I say Bungie's email like I'm unique. I got the survey email that probably dozens of y'all have already got, but of course I'm a very diligent player and I very much care about this game and the state of this game. So when they asked for my personal comments on the reason why I answered these, I left them a 549 word essay just detailing some of the stuff that I thought was good and some of the stuff that I thought really needs some work. And I figured today I would actually go over this and go over these couple things that I figured really need touching up on, and talk about the whole acts and versus seasons and stuff like that. Also, sorry, face is a little bit weird in coloration because I got a bright screen and a dark screen here. Bright screen on my left, and then dark screen over here. But anyways, with that being said, here's I'll go ahead and read just kind of, I'm not going to read word for word what I wrote here, but I did, of course, first of all, comment on the positives of the game. When they asked me why would I continue to play Destiny 2, I answered because I love the game. I love the gunplay. I love the the build craft that they have. I like the loot chase. I like doing all the activities. Like, I answered that question pretty much, I think, for the same reason that you probably still play Destiny 2, right? It's fun. Like, I do have fun playing inside of Destiny 2. And so, that's why I answered, yeah, I'm going to continue to play Destiny 2. There was a question about, how excited, or something along the lines of how excited I am for the future of Destiny 2. And again, I answered that one as I am very excited. We've got the reveal for Apollo and Behemoth, going back to the seasonal structure with 4 a year instead of 3 a year, which I don't really care for 3 a year because that's just kind of less content. Anyways, doesn't matter. But we're going back to 4 a year. Like I talked about, I am excited to see where it's going. I'm excited to see the next saga. Like, the Light and Darkness saga was amazing. It had a great conclusion with the final shape. It was fantastic. But I am very excited for the future. But there's some stuff that I figured Bungie could improve on. And that's the stuff that I detailed down here in some of my own personal comments. And of course, the first one, the content structure. Guys, this is something that's, it's lackluster and it's boring. The content structure, it's always the same. We get a new kind of like storyline, a semi-storyline. I am actually very impressed with this episodes, and I'm going to kind of talk intermittently about episodes and stuff, but this episode we had some new locations that we went on some new missions to, which I thought was really awesome. I think that's really cool, and I want Bungie to continue doing that. But really, the content season over season, episode over episode, feels the same way. Like, I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction right now. Next season, we're going to get a storyline, right? And we're going to do a storyline. We're going to get a seasonal activity. We're going to get a seasonal battleground. Of course, we already know we're getting a new dungeon, so I'm not going to throw that out there like I'm predicting a new dungeon. Like, we already know we're getting that. We're going to get, of course, new weapons, new armor, and yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at currently. It's been the same since 2019. Right, it's been the same, and it's kind of boring. It's kind of tedious right now. And one of the things that I offered, one of the bits of feedback that I offered, is making a more unique feel for each season/episode. For example, with this episode, I was actually really pleased to see that it had us going to Nessus, which is a place we'd been 100 times before. But of course, during these battlegrounds and these missions and stuff, like, they have been totally altered. Like, the terrain is now like all this kind of like almost a jungle vibe, and I really like the way that Bungie did that. And so I think that's going forward, making maybe some more unique stuff in terms of each season. Again, I don't expect them to like completely change every season, because let's be honest, like, any game you go into where they have seasons, episodes, whatever you want, divided, time-based stuff, like, it's always going to be the same. So I'm not expecting like this crazy stuff to like just break the mold on everything that they've ever done, which that's what we're going to get in the future apparently. So I'm going to hold them to that. But that was the first thing, is that the structure just feels so lacking, because it's like, okay, we're getting the same thing. Like, yeah, it's different. It's a different activity, but it's still a seasonal activity. It's a different battleground, but it's still a battleground. Like, so that was the first thing. The second thing here was the actual content itself. And this kind of ties in the other one. Of course, that was the content structure that we just talked about. Content structure being, but the content itself is a little bit lackluster. You know, it's just like I don't want to sound nitpicky, and I feel like that's the way it's going to come across. But again, like the content that we're getting, it's fun, but it's kind of a lot of the same. You know, it is pick up these things and deposit, kill enemies, scan this deal, and I don't really know how Bungie could do that differently. Like again, this is something that just as a player from an unbiased perspective, like it's kind of repetitive, scanning the same things, you know, carrying this item over here, and I want Bungie to find a way to break it up. I think maybe adding some sort of, you know, sparrow races. Look at Scourge of the Past, for example. Scourge of the Past had a section where you literally had to outrun a giant flaming servitor on your sparrow. That broke the mold. That was incredible. I loved that idea. You know, in the Hypernet Current, we saw, you know, a sparrow racing part, not a race part, but, you know, a sparrow parkour, I guess, if you want to call it, which again, that was really cool. That broke the mold, and I want to see some more of that going forward. I want to see some of that stuff introduced into, you know, our battlegrounds and our exotic missions and stuff like that. You know, so I think that the content just, it gets, not only that, but the content itself gets boring after a while. Like I'll be honest, I'm overplaying Battlegrounds. I'm overplaying the seasonal activity for this episode. And again, I think that's one of the problems that episodes does have, is it does get repetitive. Even though they added new stuff, you know, we didn't get the Battlegrounds till Act 2, which was a couple weeks after the launch of Act 1. You know, it's still, you know, it gets tiring. And I don't know if there's really a cure for that. I really don't, because that's how it's always been in Destiny. You know, the start of the season is lots of hype, lots of playtime, and as time goes on, playtime drops off. You know, I get interested in other games because Destiny's kind of boring, and that's kind of where I am right now. Destiny's just kind of, it's boring. It's like, you know, whatever. And nothing's really driving me to like, oh my god, I cannot wait to get on and play and try to get this, and this, and I'm okay with that. Okay, and I think that that's something that is to be expected from any video game. Like if you play it enough, you're gonna get tired of it, you know. But of course, we do have a new episode coming soon, so I'm ready to get back into that. But yeah, that's the whole content situation. Again, to spice this up, just adding unique things for us to do inside of missions, you know, like the Sparrow racing part. I think if they added Sparrow Racing League back to the game, that would also be a tremendous addition to the game. But you know, we can dream, right? The next thing I said was the loot structure. Feels like it is too much. Now, before everybody gets all freaked out about the loot structure being too much, here's what I'm not referring to. I'm not referring to, you know, being a try-hard player and I want loot to drop like, you know, the rarest thing ever. Like I want no exotic drops, no legendary drops, anything like that. But one of the things that I compared was Destiny 1 versus Destiny 2's loot structure. And in Destiny 1, loot felt a lot more rewarding than it does in Destiny 2. In Destiny 2, legendaries literally drop like candy. Like, I mean, I can't go 5 minutes of playing without getting a legendary drop on the ground. And for newer players, I think that this is not as big of an issue because, you know, a player like me who has thousands of hours in the game, I have basically everything I could want, right? I have all the god rolls that I want, and whenever new weapons come out, it doesn't take long to obtain the god rolls for those weapons as well, right? But I think that loot could use a little bit of a tuning back, something to make it a little bit less rare. Either that or give random world drops more unique rolls. And this is what I suggested to Bungie. Obviously, legendary crafting, you know, this is a point of contention in the community. Some people say they love it, some say they hate it. I think that honestly, where Bungie is currently with weapon crafting is right where it needs to be. I think the ability to craft weapons is, I mean, I think it's fantastic. I think it's awesome that we have the ability to do that now, because it gives players the chance to get some of those god rolls. And especially certainly raid weapons, you know, here's the reality of it. I don't want to sit and play a raid 3 times a week. I get one opportunity to get, you know, a god roll, or maybe 2 opportunities in any given raid. Let's say you get 6 chances a week to get a certain god roll, then you have to wait till next week to do it. I like the way that raids are structured so that you can eventually get a crafted weapon, and it takes time. You have to put in the, you have to invest the time, right? You have to go in on each of your characters, or I guess not each of your characters, but you got to go in on your character. You got to get your secret red box chest. You got to buy the red box from the vendor at the end, and then that gets you 40% of the way to your red border. And then there's 6 different weapons from each raid, so it takes weeks and weeks and weeks of doing it that way. But you also have the chance of getting a random red border to drop, or you could use a harmonic or a deep sight harmonizer to make your own red box. There's ways to get around it. But at the same time, I don't mind it being with raid weapons, especially because now that they have adept raid weapons from the master raid that you can go and get, there is still an incentive to go and do raids to get these true god rolls, to get your adept god roll. You want your demolitionist and vault shot oversoul edict. Let's just say that, get the adept version of it. You have to go in, you have to grind, or maybe not grind, just do it once a week, but you go in to Crota's Inn and you do that, and you get the opportunity to get it. So I'm okay with where crafted weapons are in terms of seasonal activities and raids and stuff like that. And plus, I think Bungie has done a good thing this season where they have some seasonal weapons are craftable and some aren't. The reprise weapons aren't, and I wouldn't be surprised going forward if all the reprise weapons we see in the future are not craftable. I think the only weapon I would say, the only weapon set rather that I would say shouldn't be craftable, or I'm sorry, should be craftable. Only reprised weapon set that should be craftable would be the Black Armory set, because the Black Armory, you're a weapon, it was a weapons forge. Anyways, look, never mind that. What I was saying though, back to Bungie here, is just tuning back on the legendary drops, or introducing a huge pool of world loot. Okay, so currently I think this season we got 3 or 4, I think 4 maybe, I could be so wrong in that, but I think that we got 4 world drop weapons. World drop weapons are weapons that you can only get just randomly, things like controlled vision. Controlled vision is a sidearm. You don't farm, there's not a way to really farm for that as of right now, or I take that back, maybe lost sectors you can farm for it, but you can't really, it's not something you can just go out and farm for, and I like when they add weapons like that. The unfortunate part about these weapons that are world drops that have no specific place that they come from, they just happen to pop up every now and then, is that the rolls are often really lackluster. And I think that going forward, Bungie could introduce really unique roles on world weapons that make it feel like, oh, I'm playing, oh my gosh, I just got, a insert whatever scout rifle, and then I look at the perks line, oh, it's got Firefly and Incandescent. Holy moly, that's incredible. You can't farm it anywhere, not even lost sectors. You just have to get lucky with said drop, and just adding more unique roles such as Firefly and Incandescent to world drop weapons. Keep your craftable weapons at decent rolls, I think Time Worn Wayfarer, for example, you can get what's it called? Heel Clip Incandescent, which is an S tier roll, if we're being honest. But at the same time, you could also add in another Solar Scout rifle that can roll with Firefly and Incandescent, and you just get it randomly. You can't farm it, you just have to get lucky with it. And I think that would bring back a sense of exciting loot that we had back in Destiny 1, because you see one of these world drop weapons, you see a loot, an Ingram fall off an enemy, for a fact, okay, that's about to be a world drop weapon or a world drop armor, let's go check it out. You run over there, you pick it up, lo and behold, it is the weapon, but maybe it doesn't have the god roll. So I was like, okay, I gotta keep playing, keep trying again. I think that would be a good way of changing it. Let's see here. I also said, pardon me, that when it comes to these world drop weapons, I still think that Trials of Osiris raids and dungeons should be the primary source of in-game loot. So, if for example, a hand cannon drops with Firefly and Incandescent, give it pretty low stats, across the board. That way it can still be cool with the unique perk combos, but the stats are just nowhere near stats of things like Trials weapons, stuff like that. Because I know that one of the arguments you could make is, well, if you get a Firefly Incandescent pulse rifle from a world drop, why would you want to go grind for Nullify, from Salvation's Edge? And that's a very valid point to be made. So I think that, reducing the stats on these, giving them lower stats, could kind of balance that out. Plus, at the same time, or not at the same time, but if you're going into Trials or you're going into a raid, you get you know, a pulse rifle. You get Nullify, for example, with Firefly and Incandescent, you know that that's going to be good. It's going to have high stat roll, and I would say increase the stats of raid weapons and really any in-game weapons, Trials of Osiris weapons, dungeon weapons, raid weapons. All of those should have their stats just increased a little bit going forward. But I think that adding that completely random drop to the world where you can get excited because, oh, hey, I know that this pulse rifle, this scout rifle, auto rifle, whatever, has a really unique role. You know, I can now get it just by playing randomly. Which I guess technically is a double-edged sword, because you might have some people that say, wow, it's completely random, I don't want to play because I want to be able to have a direct way to get my loot, which is why I think crafting is fine where it is, because you do have some players that they want a direct way of getting those god rolls they're looking for. So anyways, the last thing I said here, and this is going to be kind of controversial. I said, on the topic of loots, continuously providing players with easier and easier ways to get loot, i.e., for example, the new Adept raid weapon system is only going to drop the playtime for players. And this is something that is kind of true. I mean, especially for me right now, like, I'm not playing as much Destiny as I was, because I have, like I said, I've got all the weapons and stuff that I really want and care about in Destiny 2. One of the things with increasing the amount of loot and the easier methods to obtain loot, for example, the Adept raid weapon system, and let's talk about that for just 1 second, just in case anybody's not clear on it. The new Adept raid weapon system is a system where if you complete, I want to say if you get like all the patterns or get more patterns from a raid, you have an increased chance of getting other perks in these other columns. And once you get all 6 weapons, you have a chance at getting 3 perks in the left, 3 perks in the right hand column on Adept weapons, which sounds, again, that sounds awesome on paper, you know, because imagine you get, you know, a truly god roll. You get 3 perks that are incredibly desirable in the 3rd column, you get 3 perks that are incredibly desirable in the 4th column on an Adept raid weapon, and it's just like, oh, like that is the best feeling you could possibly have. The problem with that is once you get that, you are officially done with that raid. You know, if you don't like any of the other weapons, or you already have other god rolls, there's no reason to go and play that raid again, you know. And going into the future, like, it makes it difficult to grind save raids like Garden of Salvation, which, granted, Garden of Salvation is not played because it's really out of date, is old, and is not like the drops are super out of date and stuff like that. But with Garden of Salvation, like, it's difficult to put a team together because everybody's already done Salvation, or Garden of Salvation. Everybody's done with it. They don't want to do it anymore because they already have everything from it. They got Divinity, they got the armor, they got the weapons they want, and it's like, I don't want to go back to it. And yeah, Bungie could continuously refresh raids every single season going forward to have new roles and stuff like that, but I don't think that's really feasible. I think that, you know, making it easier and easier to get loot is what's going to drive players back. Okay, and the reason I say this is because there are some games in the past I've played, some looter shooters and stuff, and they did this. They increased how much loot you get, how to obtain loot and stuff like that, and playtime, my personal playtime, just like drew back significantly, because it's like, oh, okay, now I've got literally the pinnacle of all weapons. You know, Destiny 2, for example, I got the pinnacle of, you know, nullifies. Like, I cannot get a better nullify, so I'm done with the raid. I'm not gonna play it anymore. You know, and it goes all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom level, you know. And one of the things I want to make it very clear that I'm not referring to making loot more accessible. I'm talking about how easy it is to get the loot. Okay, for example, something that I'm not referring to in this comment is Trials of Osiris weapons and Passage of Persistence. Passage of Persistence, of course, will grant you an Adept weapon so long as you play Trials over and over. Either with a team, you just got to play 7 games. You have to win 7 games, but you'll eventually, if you just continue to play, you'll eventually get an Adept weapon. I don't think that is a problem, okay, because I think that's making loot more accessible. You can't really farm it. I mean, I guess hypothetically you probably could, but it's not gonna, like, that's not really efficient to do. But you could hypothetically, you know, I mean, it introduces players to a whole branch of loot that they would have never got before. I'm okay with that. But when it comes to like hardcore players and, you know, giving us the ability to now have Adept weapons with 3 different roles in each column, like that's drawing back our playtime. Okay, and again, like if Bungie were to go and change this, like, you know, the player base would whine and complain, like, oh, why can't I get my loot, blah blah blah. But like, that's one of the things that Destiny in 2014 did not have. Like, if you wanted good loot, you had to invest the time to get it. If you wanted Fatebringer, you had to get on 3 times a week. You had to do Volts of Glass 3 times a week, or the Templar specifically 3 times a week. And, or no, was it Templar? Or was I can't, it doesn't matter where it drops from. Okay, you had to do it 3 times a week. And if you didn't get it, you had to come back the next week and the next week and the next week. And granted, like, I don't think we should go back to an RNG system, a complete RNG system, but, you know, I think that, you know, when it comes to loot, like, providing players with easier and easier ways to get it is ultimately causing problems in the game. But that's those are all the things that I talked about in my survey, I guess, my feedback survey for Bungie. I do hope that in the future they do change some of these. Some of the biggest ones, you know, for me to change is the content structure, and of course the loot and how easy it is to get loot. Like, I want loot to be more difficult, or maybe not more difficult, but more meaningful when I get it. You know, if I go into a raid and I get an X raid weapon drop, like, I want that to be meaningful to me. If I do this activity or this activity or this activity, or I get a world drop, I want it to feel meaningful again. And I imagine that many Destiny 2 players probably want that feeling back too. With that being said, I want to hear your thoughts on everything we talked about today. And yeah, that's it for today's video. Do me a favor, like the video. It helps the channel a lot. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content, conversations, debates, discussions, all that good stuff. And do me one more favor here. Watch the videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like them, guys. I'll see you all on the next one. Bye for now.